A couple of weeks ago, I did a video about singles that killed an album era. Well, today I figured I would be a little more positive and do the opposite. Let's take a look at some singles that saved their albums, either because previous singles weren't hitting commercial expectations, or because fans and critics weren't loving the era until the right single came along. Let's get started with Rude Boy by Rihanna. Rihanna's 2009 album, Rated R, marked a significant image change in her career. As opposed to the fun, upbeat dance pop of her previous album, Good Girl Gone Bad, Rated R was much darker tonally and incorporated more hip-hop and rock influences. It was actually pretty shocking at the time, since Ray had never gotten as deep or personal in her music before this point. It's in my personal top 3 favorite Rihanna albums, and while it's gone on to become a fan favorite, it initially wasn't as huge of a blockbuster as her previous record was. The first 2 singles did pretty well, with Russian Roulette peaking at number 9 and Hard peaking at number 8, though the third single, Wait Your Turn, only peaked at number 10 on the Bubbling Under chart. It's not that this era was flopping, but it didn't have a hit on the level of Don't Stop the Music, Disturbia, or Take a Bow. That was until Rude Boy was released as a single in February 2010, and utterly dominated the radio. Sometimes I forget that this wasn't the lead single, since it was so dramatically bigger of a hit than the previous 3. The song topped the Hot 100 for 5 weeks in a row, becoming her 6th #1 hit, and consequently one of her signature songs. Rude Boy was an outlier on Rated R, ditching the heavier themes and darker production for a more clubby, electropop dancehall vibe. I think this was the biggest hit from this era, simply because it was closer to what people were expecting from Rihanna. As much as I love all the other singles, they're not necessarily as radio-friendly or endlessly re-listenable as Rude Boy. It's just a fun, sexy party bop that added some levity to this more melancholy era. Considering how popular electronic, upbeat, clubby party tracks were in 2009 and 2010, it makes sense that this would be the biggest smash from Rated R. Without it, we may remember this era as being even more underrated than it actually was. Again, not that it would have been a flop or anything, but having a hit like Rude Boy after 3 relatively underperforming singles definitely was the shot in the arm that this era needed. Lover by Taylor Swift. Taylor's 7th album, Lover, remains a fairly divisive one among fans and critics. At the time, I remember there being a general sentiment that this era marked a downturn in her career, and that her heyday was pretty much over. Oh, how wrong we were. It's funny looking back at what people thought at the time, since we know Taylor could now essentially release a ringtone, and it would go #1. But the Lover era really did seem like a step down for her career-wise, never quite achieving the same acclaim her previous albums had. Now, with that being said, it was still the highest-selling album of 2019, so it's not like it was doomed to fail or anything. But the first 2 singles, Me and You Need to Calm Down, got things off to a shaky start. It's not that the songs weren't hits, but fans and critics were pretty lukewarm on them, with criticism being directed at their juvenile tones and songwriting. Me especially took the most heat, but with lines like "Hey kid, spelling is fun," I can't say it was totally undeserved. You Need to Calm Down was received a little better, though audiences were split on its messaging, with some saying her support for the gay community was performative. I personally love You Need to Calm Down. It's actually a favorite Taylor song of mine, but I can understand why people felt like she was being performative, especially since she never had tracks like this before, and was famously apolitical for most of her career. Regardless, it wasn't until the 3rd single, Lover, that Taylor got back into pretty much everyone's good graces. Lover is about as simple of a love song that you could get, but that's why it works. It's just sappy and sentimental enough without being too corny. The perfect wedding dance song if there ever was one, and it was praised as being one of her best love songs for its detailed and touching songwriting. This was the clear high point, critically speaking, of the Lover era. While the first 2 singles were met with middling to good reception, Lover was the first single that pretty much everyone agreed was great. Like the last entry, it's not like this album would have bombed without the single, but it did garner more critical praise and respect that otherwise may not have happened. Sweet Melody by Little Mix. Promotion for Little Mix's 6th album, Confetti, started at a pretty unfortunate time. The lead single, Breakup Song, dropped in late March 2020, right as the pandemic began. and while it did fairly well, peaking at number 9 on the UK singles chart, it could have done a lot better had the girls been able to promote it with live performances or a better video. The second single, Holiday, dropped in July 2020 and peaked at number 15. Again, it was a hit, but certainly not the smash that previous singles like Woman Like Me or Touch were. However, things turned around with the release of Sweet Melody in October 2020. Not only was it acclaimed as one of the group's best releases, but it also became their 5th #1 single. Perhaps more important than all of this though, was the timing. Sweet Melody marked Little Mix's final single with Jessie Nelson, who left in December 2020. It's always a tense and uncertain time when a member leaves a musical group. To this day, my sister still isn't over Jerry leaving the Spice Girls, and I remember in high school, my best friend literally bawled when Zayn left One Direction, which just goes to show the effects that someone's departure can have. Fans not only go wild with theories on why they left, but there's also this sense that the group's glory days are over, and that they might not get another hit single again. Sweet Melody, though, was such a huge hit that any question of the girls' abilities to move on without Jessie were essentially null and void. Yeah, she was in the song and the video, but pretty much most of the promotion was done without her, and the song still smashed. While a group member leaving can signal bad times ahead, Little Mix proved that they could still get hits with one gone, and even though they did go on hiatus in 2022, they still managed to get several more hit songs before then. Sweet Melody was an important moment for Little Mix, not only becoming the biggest hit from the Confetti era, but also proving they could smash nearly a decade into their career without one of their founding members. Irreplaceable by Beyonce. I did a video about Beyonce's B-Day a few weeks ago, so I'll try to keep this somewhat brief to not be too redundant. Released in 2006, B-Day got off to a controversial start with the singles Deja Vu and Ring the Alarm. Deja Vu was criticized for its video, which many fans at the time did not like, prompting a whole online petition for it to be reshot. The petition cited Beyonce's quote-unquote erratic and confusing dancing, as well as unacceptable interactions with Jay-Z, and her over-the-top wardrobe choice. Yeah, because if anyone has an understated fashion sense, it's Beyonce. The song did well, peaking at number 4 on the Hot 100, though the next single, Ring the Alarm, didn't reach the same heights, peaking at number 12, and attracting controversy for its cover art, which depicted B with 2 baby alligators, which PETA deemed to be abusive. The song was also controversial since many believed it to be about a rumored love triangle between Rihanna, Jay-Z, and B. Despite her and her father shooting down the rumors, they were still out there, and it looked like B-Day was destined to be overshadowed by its controversies. However, that all changed with the release of Irreplaceable in October 2006. The song was a massive hit to say the least, spending 10 weeks at the top of the Hot 100, and becoming one of the highest selling songs of the decade. It was also the most downloaded female ringtone in 2006, and we might not care about that now, but that was actually a big deal back then. Irreplaceable got the B-Day era on track after it had suffered from multiple controversies, and went on to become one of B's signature songs, and that kind of success is truly irreplaceable. That's it for this video, but let me know some other singles that saved an era in the comments, and I'll see you next time.